I'm Andrea Isabel Lucas, founder of Bar and Soul and author of Own It All. The Own It All podcast is all about how to stop waiting for change and start creating it. I interview inspiring folks and leading thinkers who share tips on how to make a difference in your life and the world around us. Listen in each week to harness your power, maximize your time, manage boundaries, rock your career, health, relationships, and be an ally for causes that matter. We'll help accelerate all you're capable of doing with practical advice, stories, and strategies. Get ready to own it all because your life belongs to you. Hi, and welcome to the Own It All podcast. Today, my guest is Ty Alexander. Ty is a best-selling author, speaker, podcaster, and wellness blogger who teaches women how to choose gratitude over grief. In her writings and teachings, she blends radically honest stories with actionable aha lessons. Through her wildly popular blog, Love Ty Alexander, she has become a leading authority in lifestyle, beauty, and wellness-related content. She has been featured in notable media outlets such as Well and Good, Redbook, Real Simple, CNN, O Magazine, Essence, and was a 2016 Blog Her Voices of the Year nominee. Ty has also been a digital content partner to major brands such as Dove, Anthropologie, Cadillac, Estee Lauder, State Farm, Amtrak, and Ulta Beauty. In 2016, Ty fulfilled a lifelong dream of becoming a published author. Hailed as a must-read for women in search of guidance on how to make sense of their grieving process, her debut book, Things I Wish I Knew Before My Mom Died, is available in bookstores everywhere. Her first book drives home a resounding message. Women of color need a brave space to discuss their mental wellness without judgment or shame. Destination Heal is Ty's love letter to those women. This social wellness community was designed to help women cultivate life-shifting healing experiences. Destination Heal, the podcast, explores strategies and ideas for becoming your best self through active healing. As the host of the podcast, Ty takes listeners on a new journey to love shamelessly beyond the guilt, the baggage, and the insecurities that life plagues us with. From her roles as author, influencer, to strategist, she is driven by her desire to be the very best version of herself and hopes to inspire women all over the world to do the same. Welcome, Ty. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm kind of like bowled over by all these things. And it's apparent to me that, well, you're very prolific. You're obviously very creative. And I'm thinking probably very entrepreneurial.
I grew up around two parents who worked but still had like side jobs. My dad worked for Chrysler all my life, and then he also like worked on cars in our backyard. And then my mom actually quit her job to start a home healthcare business. So I've always had this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, this kind of work for yourself, make your own rules, kind of instilled in me. So I kind of knew that I was going to do something on my own. I've never been the person to like, I'm going to go to 9 to 5 and, all that. That just wasn't in my cards.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can tell that you're passionate about starting new projects, like based on whatever's happening in your life or whatever you're dealing with. So,
Yes. It's funny because I used to kind of feel bad about never knowing specifically what I wanted to do.
mhm.
And then I just realized like I'm really my soul really at the core of who I am driven by what I'm experiencing. So
Mhm.
like my mom died and I wrote a book, and then so my whole life shifted into this new lane of, talking about wellness and healing yourself. Where
Mm.
before I was very much beauty, and that still really stemmed from like how I was raised. My mom was gorgeous. We did lots of makeup together. So I was still, honing in on my experience at that time. So
Mhm.
now I'm fully accepting of like whatever is happening in my in that moment, that's just the way I'm gonna go. So
Mhm.
Destination Hill is what I'm doing now, but I can't say, 5 years from now I'm not doing something else. And
Of
that's
course.
okay for me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I know I had a little bit of a similar experience of feeling weird because I had gotten, into basically my dream job. And before even 2 years was up, I was feeling ready to move on and I didn't understand.
Mhm.
And I ended up doing this coaching session with someone who kind of did this whole profile. And she was like, oh my gosh, like you really profile highly as an entrepreneur. And
Mm.
so like you will want to start projects and then hand them off so
Mhm.
that you can start new
Right.
projects. And
Yep.
if you like, it can definitely be a curse if you aren't prepared for it. But if you plan
Mhm.
for it and you build your
Mhm.
career that way, you can really make it work. And
Yeah.
that was like the best advice I've ever gotten.
Yeah, the really ideally for me, what my mission in life is at the moment, because again, that could also always change. But
Sure.
I try to build projects and experiences around the idea that I want to teach women how to choose gratitude over grief. And as it stands right now, that's probably will be my lifelong mission, because
Mm,
as someone who's mourning, it's just not something that ever goes away. And I understand the importance of being able to choose gratitude in those moments when you want to, stay in bed and sulk, because my mom's not here, or be mad at Thanksgiving, those type of moments. So it's something
mhm.
I'm always actively doing. So I want to be able to teach women how to do that in different ways. So again, the project might change, but the overarching, like what my mission, what my passion is, will always be the same.
So let's dive right into that. I would love to hear more about what it means to choose gratitude over grief.
Absolutely. I think just prime example, holidays are hard for me. It
Mhm,
doesn't matter how I slice it. It doesn't matter if I'm in, some beautiful environment. It's hard. And because I know it's going to be hard, I prepare myself to be able to choose gratitude. So that means Thanksgiving, I know I got to be around people that I love. I make a choice to tell people I love them. I make a choice to be around people I love, rather than the opposite, which would be allowing the grief to overwhelm me. I'm in bed, I'm crying, I'm, soaking over other people's, joy with their moms. So for me, the choice is kind of like actively, one, creating those new traditions. And again, allowing myself to love beyond that moment, if that makes sense.
So instead of just shutting yourself down and, like,
Hmm.
succumbing to the pain of that grief, really forcing
Hmm.
yourself to engage with the things and people that you love
Mhm.
and
And just allowing yourself to feel love again. I think a lot of
mm,
times in grief, you at least in the beginning, I know I don't have the feeling so much now, but the first 2 or 3 years, I felt guilty for
mhm,
being loved. I felt guilty for being here, for just being able to experience certain things that my mom didn't get to see.
mhm,
And so you have to kind of retrain your brain that you deserve love beyond the time that your parents or your whoever it is that you're grieving. And the same goes when a divorce happens. That's a form of grief. Like, you have to allow yourself to be loved and to experience love beyond that. And it's a choice. It's not something that you kind of just fall in and just kind of happens, naturally on your own. You have to choose that. You have to choose that, and then go out and create those moments of joy.
so kind of taking that survivor's guilt and turning it into,
Mhm.
taking advantage of the opportunity that you still
Mhm.
have.
Mhm, or even just kind of making those opportunities. I know, like,
Mm,
again, Thanksgiving, once my mom died, our my mom was like the matriarch of our family, so
mhm,
naturally it just fell apart, right? And so we have people doing things on this side of town, and someone's doing that on that side of town, which is fine because everyone grieves in their own ways. So I had to figure out how to make my own community now that I didn't have that kind of base family anymore, you know what I mean?
mhm.
So I could have, again, chose the opposite and kind of sulked, or been sad every Thanksgiving. And to be honest, sometimes it starts that day in the morning. I wake up and I'm really upset. Christmas is probably a little bit harder because we used to decorate the tree. So decorating the tree is a little bit hard. But instead of kind of doing it by myself, I say, let me get my husband involved. Let me have my friends over for a tree trimming party. Just kind of just doing things a little differently. For me, it's always about choosing the opposite of sadness. And
Mm.
again, sadness is going to exist. I'm not perfect. I experience it, but when I can, I've really tried to choose the opposite of that.
It sounds like you and your mom were incredibly close. When did you lose her, and was that something that happened suddenly?
So it definitely happened suddenly. My mom was she was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma in August of 2012, and then she had passed away April of 2013.
Mhm,
The great part about it, or maybe the bittersweet, great is a bad word, but the bittersweet part about it is that I had about 8 or so months to really enjoy my mom in her most vulnerable state. And I think that was the moment where my whole thought process around death changed, and I no longer saw death as this horrible experience.
mm,
It was really her kind of transitioning, whatever you believe in, the body does certain things when it dies,
Mhm.
and you can kind of see the mind moving, and you can see the transition happening to wherever the soul goes to, right?
Mhm.
And so I got to experience these really intimate moments with my mom, that again changed how I viewed death. And so now when I experience death, it's no longer this kind of unbearable moment. It really is this blessing that I was able to experience love in that way.
Mm, that's amazing. Actually, my best friend recently, she's been a yoga teacher and studio owner for a couple decades and recently transitioned into nursing and then kind of quickly after that into
Mm,
hospice nursing and
mm.
became a death
Oof, whew,
doula.
I
And
just got
now
chills.
I know it's like, so she's a death doula and she's always talking
Yeah.
about like this whole idea of like living well and dying well and the way that death.
But that's it. Dying well, there's something to be said about like that. For me, that was really I'd never wanted to be married, right? Like I had been with my husband for almost 16 years and I was like, I'm not
Wow.
getting married, whatever. Like, we're just gonna be out here, be girlfriend and boyfriend, whatever. But then my mom was dying and I saw my mom and my dad, who were married for 35 years, I saw how their connection changed once death was amongst them. And ideally, I wish that we could just live like this,
Mm,
all the time. But something about death makes you become, more brave, more courageous, more vulnerable, like all of the things that you kind of suppress once you become an adult,
mm,
they just come out, and it's just a lovely experience to, if you allow it. For me, death wasn't this kind of, "Ugh, I can't." It really was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I'm able to witness my mom, take her last breath and really transition to wherever that next whatever is." You know what I mean?
that's an example of really choosing gratitude over grief.
Again. And so again, I don't wanna seem like, the expert in grief, because again, I say there are moments where I break down, there are moments where I tear up, but it really is, for me now, 6 years later, I'm just so grateful to have had a mother who instilled so many, like, the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because of my mom,
Mm,
which is absolutely crazy to me every time I think about it, every time I say it, is that I'm doing Destination Hill because my mom died.
mm,
And I'm not entirely sure, if I hadn't had experienced that, if this would be my path.
mhm,
So I'm grateful to be able to do this. Again, it's bittersweet because obviously I want my mom here, but just the idea of being able to experience people rather than owning them in that nature, like, oh, my mom was here and she's gone. Like, you don't own people, you experience them. So I try to really think about the experiences that I had with them.
mm. You must have really connected with a lot of people in this community who are dealing with grief.
Yeah. Well, and not even just grief, I find, which is one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to keep up with it, Destination Heal. There's so many people, especially women of color, who really don't have a space to be vulnerable.
Mm,
Like we go out into the world and we put our boss hat on, our mom hat on, our, CEO hat, like whatever. And as women, we wear many
yep.
hats. And then we come home and then you got to be the wife, the mom, so it's never a space where you get to just be Ty,
Mm,
or I get to just be, you know what I mean? Like, and so I find that Destination Heal is that kind of safe place for people, women specifically, to land and just say, you know what, I had a rough ass day
mm.
and I just need to tell you all about it. And I don't want no judgments. I know I was wrong. But you know what I mean? Like, but I want somewhere to vent, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So sometimes it's not necessarily about grief. Like sometimes we have a Facebook group and sometimes we're just shooting the shit. We're sharing funny videos. It's just a really safe community to talk about, from the good stuff to the hard stuff to the bad stuff to the healing stuff. It's really just a place to kind of just commune in that.
absolutely. That sounds amazing and it's funny what you shared because it kind of reminds me of this idea of like owning it all, including like owning your role in whatever the situation and as much as I do try to live that way and always look at what I could have done differently or what I did to contribute to whatever the situation is, there are those moments that you're just like, yeah, I know, but I'm still sad about it. Like, it's still like, I know not to take it
That
personally,
part,
but like my feelings are still
that
hurt
part,
and like all those things.
that part. Exactly, exactly.
Oh, wow. Can you give me a couple of like examples of what it's like when you're choosing the opposite of sadness? And you did give some great examples about like decorating for Christmas, but I guess this is a little bit of a question we've been unpacking a bunch on this season of the podcast, is how we deal with our thoughts and feelings and whether,
Mhm,
and I was listening to one of your podcast episodes and you were saying a lot of stuff about your feelings aren't facts, and we
mhm,
have a lot of
mhm.
these like entitled thoughts. And so I guess like when you are reaching for the opposite of sadness, does that look like taking action immediately? Does it look like
Yeah,
giving
absolutely.
voice to what you're thinking? Does it look like changing what you say inside your head, changing what you say out loud?
All the above. It looks like it looks like when I'm laying in bed in the morning and it's 9 o'clock or whatever, and the alarm has went off, and I know I wanna lay in the bed and sulk and be sad, I get up immediately. My
Mm,
feet hit the floor because I know this is the agenda I have for today. This is the intention that I have, and this is what I need to do. Because again, my feelings aren't fact. My
mhm,
feelings really aren't fact until I make them a fact. I have these feelings, and then because I laid in bed all day, then the fact is I got nothing done.
mm,
My feelings had nothing to do with the task that I had to do for the day,
mm.
period, point blank. And honestly, no one cares about your feelings but you. Like, not a drop, and, like, I'm sure my husband loves me to death, but ideally, most of the things that I feel he could care less about. Here's what needs to be done with the house today. Here's what you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm,
there's certain especially when you get to a certain age, and I'm 42, so there's lots of tasks that need to be done and checked off each day, you know what I mean?
mhm,
And it's like, at some point, it's like your feelings are great, and while we should definitely own them, and they should have a place in our life, it definitely doesn't need to be a place every day, all day.
mm,
And a lot of times what happens in trauma and in circumstances, we allow those feelings to just take over our life all day, 24 hours a day. I feel this. I feel that. I felt this. Okay, girl, you felt it. What are you going to do about it?
right.
Where's the action? Because you can feel all day. That doesn't change. Feeling doesn't make any changes.
Mm,
Again, you should acknowledge them. I am a firm believer. Acknowledge your feelings, write them down, journal. But then after that, what's the action behind that? Because you don't want to feel that way for a long time. Even if I'm sad, I could write down I'm feeling sad, I miss my mom, da 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 da. But then what's the steps to get out of that feeling?
yes.
And for me, it's okay, I got to get out of the bed. I got to stick to my agenda. Maybe I go to the store, maybe I go to her favorite store, do a little retail therapy. Maybe I'm cooking her favorite, meal. Like, what are those steps that you're going to take to get out of that moment?
Mm.
So, yes, it's all the above, but mainly it's about doing those actionable steps to move yourself out and past that moment.
So really not letting your feelings run the show. Like you can acknowledge
Because
them, but they don't get to
they don't.
decide.
They don't get to decide anything. And when you allow them to decide, guess what happens? Nothing. You're stagnant. You're able to go nowhere. You're absolutely crippled when you allow your feelings to move for you.
Mm,
It just doesn't work.
right. So you talked about journaling, like acknowledging them, like, okay, great. I wrote them down. Now they're kind of externalized. I can look at them and,
Well,
deal with
because you
them.
gotta make them real, right? Like, you
Mm,
gotta make it make sense, because a lot of times also what happens is that we spend so much time ignoring our feelings. And so that's why I say, like, feelings aren't fact per se, but they are real, right? And so if you don't acknowledge them, if you don't give them a thought, if you don't say, I feel this way because, then you can never get to the underlying root of the problem. And now you're just sad and depressed for no reason. And
mhm.
it's like, but why?
Right. You kind of have to unpack it.
Yeah, unless you have like a clinical depression where there's some kind of imbalance happening, you know what I mean? There's usually a reason why we're here, whether it's childhood trauma or, like, there's a reason. And
Mhm,
because we don't unpack those things, and then we look up and we're 42 and you've got all you 8 and 9 bags that you've been dragging throughout life, you're going to be tired.
mhm,
You're tired and you have nowhere to put them. And eventually those bags fall on top of you. And you know what I mean? So
mhm.
it's this idea of, again, feelings are real, but they are not fact
Mm.
at all.
So when you talk about your feelings, do you have like, ways of setting boundaries so that they don't, because in my experience, for example, say like my feelings are hurt because somebody, did something that I took personally and whatever. The more I talk about it, the worse I'm making it because I'm just getting agreement for it and everybody's getting riled up around me so I can feel more shitty about it. Like, do you have ever set boundaries for yourself? Like, I'm only going to talk to my therapist about this, or I'm only going to talk about this like for 15 minutes and then I'm going to put it aside, or anything like that? Or do you ever just talk about the opposite of those feelings?
So if you haven't noticed, I talk a lot in general. Um, but I have safe people, right?
Hmm.
So my husband is a safe person. My best friend is a safe person. My closest cousin, Carla, have about 5 people who are very safe, right? Who I know I can trust with my feelings. Who I know, one, I won't be judged. Two, they're going to tell me the truth. And I usually lead the conversation with something like, hey, I got to talk to you about something and I just want to vent.
Mm.
And so then that person knows, well, all she's doing is venting. She don't want to know if she's wrong. She don't want to know. She don't want an opinion.
Hmm.
She don't want to solve a resolution. She just wants to vent. And then sometimes the conversation might be, hey, I got this thing on my mind, and I really need you to tell me if I'm wrong.
Hmm.
And so it just depends on how I frame the conversation, and vice versa. Where my friendship circles are very clear on how we communicate. Communication for me is important,
Hmm.
and I feel like in order for me to really dissect my feelings and unpack them with others, I have to be able to communicate with them. And a lot of times we don't. A lot of times we get, you say you're in a group of girlfriends and you start talking and you unpack your stuff, but you didn't set the intention for the conversation.
Mm.
So then you allow 5 other people to intend for you.
Right.
So then you got one person who's judging you, you got one person who's ready to give you all the solving, right?
Hmm.
Then you got one person like, you were so wrong. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think a lot of that, sometimes when you do share your feelings with people, you have to be really specific with what your intention
Mm.
is.
That's great. Hey, it's Andrea again. Can I help give you the courage to own your life? Want to redirect your time towards the goals and experiences that really matter? Get your copy of my book, Own It All, on Amazon. Part manifesto, workbook, and expert interview collection. Then, let's connect on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and continue the conversation. Find out more at AndreaIsabelLucas.com. We have a guest on this season of the podcast who does all this thought work. She's a coach and she does all this thought work with people about like basically your feelings are driven by the thoughts that you have. So if you like choose
Mhm.
different thoughts, you can create different feelings, but it's not like snapping your fingers. It's like a really intense practice, like meditating. Like you're never just done with it. And it's like, oh, good, I mastered
Mhm.
that. But, we kind of went back and forth a little bit about like, yeah, for me, I have difficulty changing my thoughts until I change what I'm saying to people. But,
Mm.
it's like you don't want to
Mhm.
bullshit people either. You don't want to just be like, I'm
Yeah.
super happy about my breakup. Like if you're not. Um,
Well, honestly, that comes out because you're bullshitting yourself,
mhm,
And it's like, until you, again, recognize what the feeling is, and especially with breakups and, like, with divorces and things, you tend to tell, I mean, even with grief, honestly, you tend to tell yourself you're okay before you're not. And so then the language that comes out to your community is, "Oh, I'm fine. It's okay. I'm doing well." You know what I
mhm,
mean? And so until you're really honest with those hardcore feelings of like, no, I'm not
mm.
okay. I'm dying inside. And very few people have the space to be able to be that vulnerable with people.
Like how vulnerable do you get with your online presence?
Oh, real. For the most part, I share pretty much everything except my husband and I's relationship, because that's not just me. I recognize that that's also him. So it's invasive on the other person's part, right? So I'll share a little bit about him and I, but most of our very intimate, like our arguments or even our whatevers, like that's mine and mine only. But everything else, I share everything, from my wellness journey to my body goals to, just everything, and even the sad times. Like I've cried on IG stories a lot. Like it's
Yeah.
just but I think Instagram needs more of that. socially, just because you see the very perfect curation of things, the pretty pictures, and that can really do a toll on your self-esteem when, your whole timeline is filled with folks who are perfect. They got the perfect outfit on, they got the perfect face on, they went to the perfect job, and you're over here struggling. It's comforting to see a person who you may admire go through the same things that you're going through.
It's such a relief, and it's really interesting because I am always so appreciative of people who share a lot of personal stuff, and, like, the good, bad, and the ugly kinda thing, and I
Mhm.
always wanna do that more, but it's a little tricky for me with my, situation because I own a company and I have a lot of employees, and a lot of the times, like, the things that I'm
Mm,
going through that are hard or that are sad have to do with, like,
with them.
yeah, with, like, change
Mhm.
happening in the team and, like, difficulties with that, or even difficulties with, like, the community or the members or anything like that. It's like,
Mhm,
I
mhm.
wanna admit that my life isn't perfect all the time and that I'm sad, but I'm also like, I don't wanna look like I'm trying to like, draw pity or, you know
Mm. I don't know if that would be how it would be received.
Okay.
I would probably say it might be a good idea to start sharing a little bit, but I would share in the like after you solve the problem, like, here was the problem, here's how it affected me, and then here is my solution. I think
Mhm.
especially for business owners, it helps a lot when you see other entrepreneurs, go through certain situations with their employees, and then here's how I solved it.
Mm.
I think it would be a good conversation to have with your community, though.
Yeah, that's a good thought, sharing, like, more after the fact. And, of course, it's,
Mhm,
like, less on my
mhm.
mind after the fact. I almost have to, like, make myself a note or, like, set a reminder, like, "Talk about this in a couple weeks," when it's not, like, an open wound that's happening, and
Yeah, right.
yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting, and even what you said about you and your husband, it's like, you wanna be diplomatic and respectful about how much you do share, and I'm
Mhm.
pretty quiet in terms of, sharing about my family, and I realize that if I'm not sharing about the shit that's breaking in my business and in my relationships, and if I'm not exposing a lot about, like, my family, then all I'm doing is posting pictures of me looking like I am having a blast being a business owner all the time, and that's
And
definitely
that's
not
not the
real.
case.
No, it's really not. Oh,
Yeah,
man, it gets
farthest from the
stressful.
truth. Which is also why, like, I share a lot about just, we have a retreat coming up, and I talk about, the process in it and how I've come to figure out the agenda. And it's just, I think it's helpful for people who are either trying to start a company
Mm,
or in the process of it to kind of see your process as it happens as much as you can,
yeah.
right? And sometimes I don't tell those, the specifics or whatever, but I definitely don't want it to seem like this is a walk in a park, because
Mm.
it's not.
Yeah, I love
It is
that.
probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done, to be able to command a community and then command guests at a retreat. Like, it's a hard task to do, and I am left drained
Mm.
when I'm finished, but it is the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done.
Yeah, I could see that because, like, there's so many reasons why, but especially when you have an amazing following online, but it's so different when you get together with people in real life.
Mhm. It's actually more because they want so much more of you, because they think that they know you, right? And
Mm.
so because I do share a lot and I'm always, showing my face, it's like when they seem like, "Oh my god, it's just Ty." And so then you have to kind of build a little bit of a boundary, like, "Hey girl, I don't really know you." So let's do some groundwork first. But they expect more from you because you are giving so much of them. Like, we are so face forward. Like, the way we entrepreneur now is so much different than, 10, 20 years ago. Like, we're definitely in front of people more. And so that allows them to expect a little bit more.
That makes sense. So now, okay, let me see if I got everything. You have your blog, your podcast, of course, your book, you're doing your retreats. Like, are these all active projects that you are continuing to work on, or are some of them kind of like set it and forget it and you're focusing
I'm
on one
exhausted.
project at a time?
Nope. Nope, I'm exhausted. The blog, my physical blog, is kind of suffering a bit because, I do have the podcast and it's kind of new, so I've been putting most of my energy there, and then just kind of trying to figure out how to make that content a little bit different, than what the podcast is. I never want content to be, like, duplicated so many times, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, the podcast is new. The Destination Heal, the retreat is something that not really set it and forget it, but I don't have to work like once registration closes, I won't have to work on it again until about March.
Okay.
So I have a little bit of break time, and then obviously from like March till June, then I'll work on it, and then it'll be done, and then we'll plan the next one, that kind of thing.
Wow.
Obviously, the podcast has seasons, so I'll end in end of November, and then we'll pick back up in January. So kind of a little bit breaks in there, but it's definitely multiple projects happening all at the same time.
Wow. So, like, what does a typical day or week look like for you?
So typically, I just wake up and I go work out. Working out for me now has become how I gather my thoughts
Mm,
on what I need to get done and just also kind of release some of the energy that I may have. I dream a lot. I don't know about anybody else. I dream a lot. It's very vivid. I dream about my mom a lot, and sometimes it jars me a
mm,
little bit because it feels so real,
mm,
right? And so I'm sleep and it feels like a different world, and I wake up and then she's snatched, back
mm.
away from my life. So I have this kind of toggle that happens in my mind. So then I go to the gym to kind of just work all that out to get back in the present because I definitely enjoy that experience. So I don't want it to go away, but I want to be able to function when I am in the real world and not like, in my dream world. So I work out and then I come back and I usually write whatever I thought about in the gym. I have lots of thoughts when I'm working out. So I write down what I have to do. And then I usually check my emails daily and then see, whatever money might be inside those emails. We all love emails. And then after that, I usually do on Mondays, I do show notes for the podcast, and then I record on Tuesdays. But my days are kind of light. It does involve a lot. I call it market research, but I watch a lot of videos. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I just to get inspiration and kind of see what the conversation is
Mhm.
that's happening on the internet. I always like to be in the conversation. Um, Also creating it, but I like to be able to kind of like, so here's what so and so talked about, and here's my opinion, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's pretty much my day. And then my husband comes home and I try to shut my life on the internet down and
Mhm.
I try to be a wife
Yeah.
and cook and hang out
Be
and
present.
spend time with him.
Yeah.
So, yep, be present in the moment. Yep.
So who do you have on your team? Like, how many people help you?
So I have an assistant who I try to allow to assist me. And if you if you ever listen to my podcast, I tell people I am also healing.
Yeah.
We are healing together. So I have major control issues. The idea of teaching someone how to do something when I could have just did it myself is I'm still resolving that within my own heart.
Yeah.
So I have an assistant again who assists me when I allow her, and then I have a social then I have a social media manager who actually manages the Destination Heal page. I literally don't even touch that page
Okay.
at this point. It's all curated by her, and she finds on Instagram, our Destination Heal page is really inspired by women of color and their pictures and kind of quotes that inspire us from those pictures.
Mm,
So that's the theme of there. So she does all of that on there and then handles the Facebook page. And then when we go to events, she'll do like some lives and stuff like that. So I'm very disconnected from the social aspect of Destination Heal. And I focus on actually curating the events and the retreats and things like that. And then I'm super active on the Facebook group because I do daily affirmations and kind of, we call it unpack this. And I
mm,
give people a question to think about for the day, like a reflection, and then everyone answers it. And it could be a question like, what are your favorite roles in your life, whether it be mom, sister, boss, and kind of get people to thinking about how they exist in the world to other people. And so yeah, that's pretty much it.
wow.
It's just her, me, and her.
That sounds like the name of a podcast, actually.
Her, me. Yeah, I would like I said, I'm still healing and I'm still trying to um work on. Oh, and I have a manager for my blog, but I don't really count her as like a team, but I guess she will be my team. I have someone who kind of because as a blogger, I still, get social campaigns and all that kind of stuff. So she goes out and vets companies and finds alignment between me and brands. A lot of times I'll do sponsored posts either on my blog or on Instagram. So it's actually me, her, and her.
Wow. So when you do, I'm looking at your blog right now and I am obsessed with these gorgeous photos of you. Like,
Oh,
how
thank
often do
you.
you do photo shoots?
So I am blessed. My husband is a photographer, so whenever I feel like it, I'll go outside and take a picture, or go to a studio and take a picture. I also have become pretty good at taking my own pictures,
Oh,
so
wow.
I'll set up my tripod and my camera in my office, and I'll put my lights up, and we'll do like a little selfie type of thing. And I'll take my own picture. So it depends on if I'm inspired. Lately, I haven't felt like taking a picture. Like, I've been all selfied. I'm like, here's this selfie, and here's what's on my mind.
Mm.
But for the most part, I maybe when I was on my game, like when I was really about blogging, I would do it at least once a week.
Wow. That's so cool. That's like everyone's, well, at least my dream to have a photographer husband. That's fantastic.
I have a photographer husband. Everyone wants one.
Right? That's just the best. Most women are like the ones usually behind the camera wishing somebody would take a picture of them and their kids
Yes.
or whatever.
Yes, I have several friends that are set, and I'm like, "Oh my god, you're so lucky."
Mhm.
But it also can get frustrating because I have I'm very particular, I'm a little controlling, so it's like I wanna see the picture every 5 seconds, and he's like, "Oh, I took the picture, I don't
Yeah,
understand."
exactly.
The photo shoots aren't really enjoyable that much. It usually ends up in a fight, so, I try to come with my mood boards and my inspiration, so that way, I'm very clear on what I want instead of having to, do it 1,000 times. But yeah, for the most part, my husband does my pictures.
So you kinda love modeling.
So I You're funny. I modeled a little bit in, my past life. Again, I've done lots of things, and modeling was one of the things that I did, in my 20s.
Mm,
And so every now and then when, people ask me to do something, I do model. I enjoy it. I enjoy taking pictures. I know that I know all my angles. I
right.
have the same smile. I know how to not
Yeah,
smile too hard where my gums aren't showing,
right.
So yeah, I do enjoy
I
it.
can tell because, like, if you have a whole, like, vision board for, like, how you want the shoot to go and, like, you're thinking it through, like, it seems like you really do enjoy those shoots.
Yeah, I enjoy it, but I definitely think it's more me being controlling. I
Yeah.
can't give myself
Protecting your creative
too much.
vision.
Yeah, I was like, I can't give myself too much credit. I think it is a lot of I want what I want, and I want it to look how I want it to look. So when you're not the person taking the camera and just visually, I could tell you, take my picture straight on, get my feet and my toe, all that, and you could see it a different way than what I saw it in my head. So I
Mm.
try to give really clear examples so that you're not irritated with me and I'm not disappointed.
That makes sense. You said that, like, you and your mom you kinda grew up with, like, beauty being a big part of your lifestyle, like,
Mhm.
I was just curious, like, what do you love about beauty and fashion? Because I feel like that's one of those things
Mm.
that a lot of us women love it, and we feel like we're not supposed to love it too much or, like, we're
Mhm,
supposed to feel funny
mhm.
about it, do you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes, I do. Fashion or style, I think because my style changes so much, it changes on how I feel, so I'm not never really excited about it, but beauty rocks my world. I
Okay.
remember as a kid, I would sit, watching my mom get ready to go out on dates with my dad, and I would sit on a stool and watch her. She would use her Noxzema and then clean her face, let it sit for a while, and then do the moisturizer and then rub it. Like, just the whole idea of making yourself pretty.
Mm.
I saw my mom do that from I was like 5 or 6, watching my mom in this routine, and they went out every Friday night.
Oh.
So, I would get myself together, go in the room, get my little drink and sit on the stool and talk to her while she's doing her makeup and then putting, the little blush on and the red lipstick. So, for me, I was just in awe of her
Mm.
process. Something about it intrigued me. And then so when I got older, I did the same thing. So I've always been into beauty and just I guess at that age, I could feel how beauty made people feel,
Mm.
right? Like I could feel it from my mom. Like I could see her go from one reaction to the next. Like, okay, slowly put my makeup on. But by the time I put my lipstick on, I'm finished. I'm like, ah, I'm amazed. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
just that aha that beauty gives you to your face, right?
yeah.
So then growing up, getting older, it's just putting my makeup on is a like it's a release for
Mm,
me, you know, like I get in the bathroom, I turn my music on, you know, it just brings such a joy. Like I get all choked up when I talk about it because I
yeah.
can't really
Yeah.
explain how I feel about beauty and just what it makes like for me, it's my self-care,
Mm,
honestly. It's
yes.
doing my makeup and getting my hair done and, you know, putting on my fancy clothes, even if it's just sneakers and leggings or whatever, like getting clean, you
Mm,
know, just does something to my soul, you know?
mm. Yeah, I think that's so beautiful, and you described it so beautifully. It's your self-care. It's, um, yeah, taking care of yourself, and it's causing you
Mhm,
to feel so much better. It's like transforming
mhm,
from,
mhm,
before and after kind of thing. Almost
mhm.
like, yeah, just a self-care ritual, and I think too there's something about the self-expression piece to it where,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like choosing who you're showing up as with
Yes,
other people,
exactly,
and yeah.
exactly, exactly, and the idea that you get to have that choice, right?
Mm,
Like, so I could show up one day and I got my smoky eye on and, you know, my nude lip and, you know, my hair is up in a bun and I really look like my mom, right?
mm,
Or I could show up and I look like the 12-year-old Ty.
mm,
You know, I got light makeup on, a little bit of blush, a little gloss, you know what I mean? So,
yep,
to your point of, like, expressing it, it definitely and for me also, I think it allows me to release those kind of feelings.
mm,
I know that when I do my makeup and I feel like my mom, I got a smoky eye on, I got a red lip, I got my hair up in a bun because I'm literally channeling my mom. I'm literally
mm.
trying to be her subconsciously. And it's funny because I had posted a picture on Facebook and my brother was like, "You look like mommy." And I was like, "I know. Thanks. I tried."
Yeah. Wow, that's
And again,
incredible.
that dialing it back, that's me choosing gratitude.
Mm,
That's me recognizing that in this style, in this makeup look, I look like my mom versus saying, "Oh my God, I look like my mom. I'm so sad." You know what I mean? So I choose to find great joy in that. Like when people say, "You look just like my mom, like your mom." Yes, I love it.
mm.
Absolutely love it. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Like, that just kind of opened something up for me because I'm a I'm obsessed with RuPaul, and I am obsessed with RuPaul's Drag Race, and I freaking love style, and I love beauty, and I love makeup, and I love jewelry, and I love clothes, I love everything. And I love, love Drag Race, and I think that's
Mhm.
one of the things that is so remarkable about it is this, idea of being able to transform into anybody you
Anything you want.
fucking want.
Anything.
Yes, it's like,
Anything.
RuPaul goes from being a man to, like, the glamazon, in the
Mhm.
space of
Mhm.
one episode, and so do all the queens on the show, and, like, you look at them when they're, doing their little off-stage confessionals to who they are when they step onto that stage, and it
Mhm.
reminds you that, like, anybody can be anything if you
Mhm,
choose that,
mhm,
and,
and it gives you so much courage to again show up when you don't have the face on, right? Like I feel like for me, the makeup and all that is practice. Like so when the days that I don't, I'm still fly. You know,
Right.
I'm still, you know what I'm saying? It's just like you get to practice, but it also gets to remind you that you're still whoever you are with or without it, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah. So, fun fact, I was listening to your podcast and you were talking about how you had your son when you were 19. I had my son when I was 19. Yep.
Oh, yay, almost kinda teen mom.
Exactly. Yeah, he is 19 now. He will actually be 20 in December, and
Oh,
yeah,
wow, grown men,
amazing.
grown
I
men.
know.
It's been such a joy to watch my son become a man.
Mm.
It's nothing it was never my plan to become a mother.
Mhm.
I was, again, never the person like, "Oh, I'm gonna have a baby, I have 2.5 kids, I'm gonna get married." I was never that girl.
Mm.
But the relationship that we have is so friendly.
Mm.
Um, it's just I'm gonna tear up. It's a friendship that I didn't know I needed from a person who wasn't my age. Like to get to hear his thought process about pop culture
Yeah.
and the world and what's happening to black men. Like just to hear how also prolific he can be.
Mm.
It's definitely amazing that came out of my body. Like that's my seed.
Yeah, that is so cool. It's just you're proud of him and the man he's grown
Yes.
up to be. That's amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I understand. I've been, getting really emotional lately, and even on this podcast, when you were talking about your mom, I was, like, getting so emotional, and then the other day, I was in the airport, and I was, like, really overtired. I had to get up super early to catch a flight, and I saw, like, a 10-year-old boy walk by that kinda reminded me of my son, and I literally burst into tears in the airport.
Listen, I tell people all the time, I'm a big baby. I cry at everything, the moon, the stars. I am crying. But
Same.
but that's what I think is so amazing about what we do. I think it's something to be said about women in particular who can own their feelings and be able to let it be what it is,
Mm,
right? Like you're in that moment and you see the little kid in the airport or whatever, and you have your moment and you go about your day.
mm.
There's something so brave and so vulnerable about that moment, you know?
Yes. Yeah. I'm
Yes, yes, I know.
and I'm also like, am I dealing with some kind of like undiagnosed like problem?
No,
Like,
absolutely not.
is this
We're not
normal?
gonna own that. We're not gonna own that at all. This is completely normal. We cry because we feel, and we're always feeling, and
Yeah,
that's it.
that's true.
That's it.
I was, like, walking up to get a coffee, and I was, like, already waiting, and the line was kinda long, so by the time I got up there, like, I was just crying ordering my coffee at the airport. This is so awkward, but I probably won't see these people again, like, whatever.
Right, so it doesn't even matter.
Oh my
And if
gosh.
I do, love me as I am,
Yeah.
tears and all.
Yeah. But, too, I do think there is something where women our age, for the most part, are not dealing with like, "Holy shit, my kid is grown up," you know?
Yeah, because I don't remember lots of people having kids young. I think in my circle, I was definitely the only person who had a kid.
Right.
They were all like in college or working. So I think the amount of people in around our time who had kids is really slim to none. So yeah, that
Yes.
part I will agree. It's not, and I do remember in my 20s feeling really isolated because there was no like I wish I had a Destination Hill then
Yeah.
to kind of talk about all of the, being 20 and wanting to party and still having to parent and, trying to deal with, teachers who didn't respect you, like just a trough
Mm,
full of things that happen,
yeah,
when you're a teen-ish mom. So yeah, now obviously I've grown and I can kind of express that, but I definitely wish I would have had something back then to kind of help us heal and, move forward.
absolutely. I'm looking at I'm looking at all your stuff. I'm looking at your blog, I'm looking at your
Thank
Instagram.
you for them page views, girl.
Um, I would like to follow you on Instagram, but I am blocked right now, and it's pissing
Oh
me off
no.
so bad.
But
So
who blocked you?
Instagram blocked me because I
Why?
actually got interested in getting like, engaging more on my accounts, and I started following people more, and they
Oh,
started
yeah, I
being
did
like,
hear.
"You shared your password with a service that gets likes and follows." I'm like, "I did not share my password. These are just my 2 little human thumbs over here pressing buttons."
I
Like,
mean, I get it because 'cause they're trying to be, proactive and, lots of people get hacked, but then sometimes you're like, "Come on, dude, like, really?"
seriously, like, I mean, it probably looked like a huge spike because I went to a conference and somebody said to me at the conference, like, "Well, the best," and this actually segues into my question I was gonna ask you, but this is okay. This is people at home, this is what not to do. Um, so I was presenting at a conference and I was saying like, "Wow, some of these like other presenters have so many followers and like I've just never figured out how to like really grow my following."
Mm,
And someone
mhm,
said to me,
mhm,
"Well, okay, there's a picture. You're in it. It's from this conference and it's got like 200 likes. Like follow those people. They'll follow you back." So
mhm,
I started doing that
mhm.
and I was like, "Holy shit, this actually works." Like I was getting like 100 followers a day and I think that's how my accounts like got flagged. But really I wasn't like I never shared my password with any sketchy like services or anything. I was just
Right, right.
organically like, "Oh, wow, I can actually take an interest." And the cool thing was like these were people at the same conference. So then they started commenting on my photos and being like, "I loved your session." And I was
Mhm,
getting to talk to
mhm.
them. And then like they shut me down. But where I was going with this was, um, basically, I'm asking for me, obviously, and everybody else who has a message, wants to have more of a platform, have their voice be heard, get themselves out there. Like, what are some of your tips for helping to grow your platform and just get yourself out there?
Well, one, you gotta figure out what your message is, right?
Hmm.
You gotta figure out what the message is and stick to that. And you can't really let the idea of like no one's looking at me deter you from sharing. So you have
Mm,
to share even when it's only 5 likes, you gotta keep sharing.
okay.
Because what happens is when you stop sharing, then they forget who you are anyway. And so you can't build on that. So you have to start with the 5 that are listening, give them good content, 10 more will come. Then now you have 15. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
have to keep growing that. You can't really focus on the vanity of the matrix of it. Like likes and followers, like that's great, but there's lots of people who got 2 million followers and ain't got no job and are broke. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So
Yeah.
you gotta really focus on the content that you have. And to your friend's point, not only following people back, but participate in conversations,
Hmm.
right? So when I follow you and I see someone make comment on something and maybe I agree with the comment, then I'll reply to them and say, "Oh my God, doesn't she look cute too?" I know. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you gotta participate in those conversations, not just with the person who you're commenting on, but also their audience,
Makes sense.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and then ultimately, a lot of times people get a message and they pretend that there's something that they're not. Like they're told that like that's not their message. And so now your audience is confused. So
Mm.
today we're talking about how I'm being amazing and I'm great. And then the next day you're like, "Grr, I hate everything." And so while I'm I'm all about knowing your feelings, it's like it's a delicate balance in what your message is.
Okay.
Like people know that yes, I have bad days, but it's never going to be a message from me that says, "Oh my God, I give up today."
Right.
Like that's never, you know what I mean? And so you got to really have to lead with your message and not confuse your audience in that way.
Be consistent and be authentic and
Mhm.
yeah, don't
Authentic, be consistent, and engage.
love
In
it.
short.
Thank you. Mic drop.
Oh, you're welcome. Mic drop.
Where should everybody go if they want to keep in touch with you?
So you can follow me on social media. I am Love Ty Alexander, and that's Love and then Ty Alexander. Our wellness community is Destination Heal, and same handle all over the internet.
Oh, it has been such a pleasure talking to you today, and thank you so much. It
Thank
really
you.
was a
Thank you so
privilege to
much.
interview you.
Oh, thank you. It was so great. It's crazy to even think that people listen to me or read me. So I'm always in awe when someone's like, "Oh, I'm on your page," and I'm not like, so thank you for finding me, for going through my stuff and reading me and introducing me to your audience. I really do appreciate that.
My pleasure. I'm Andrea Isabel Lucas. Thanks for listening to the Own It All podcast, made with love and gratitude from Boston. If you liked what you heard, subscribe, rate, and review on your app. Then, connect with me on social media for more helpful tips and techniques. I'd love to talk with you there. Or maybe I can motivate your team at a conference, retreat, or special event. I'll be back next Wednesday with a new episode. See you then.